Welcome to The Miracle You, guiding you on the journey towards finding passion and purpose and how to discover, create, and live a life by your design. Whether your success has been plentiful or your missed opportunities have been overwhelming, we can help you become a more empowered, masterful person and show you how to share your gift with the world. It's time to inspire change from within with the host of The Miracle You, Vince Kramer.
Hello, imagination. I'm Vince Kramer, your host, and welcome to The Miracle You, where you learn about the magic of living your life by finding the example in real life. Welcome. As I shared with you a couple podcasts ago, we want to change up the format of The Miracle You a little bit and start bringing some more information to you to help you understand how life really works, how you're creating your own life, and what you can do to take it to a next step, to help you understand concepts that are being shared out there that might not necessarily be explained. Things like the present moment, the observer of your life. We really want to increase your awareness to help you raise your level of awareness or raise your level of consciousness so you understand how you're creating life day to day and how to really begin to create the life that you deserve, to create the life of your birthright. So it's a pleasure for me to bring this awakening series to you. And it's even more of a pleasure that Mary and I will be talking to you on the podcast together over this series and really bringing some of our experiences, bringing some of our understandings to you in a way that we hope will really bring a light to your path, to your journey. And we really encourage you that if you've got any questions through this series or any of the podcasts, to please send them to vince@imaginemiracles.com so we can put together the answers and we can get the answers to you to help you understand what we're sharing even a little bit more. So with no further words needed, here we go. Welcome to the Awakening series. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited as we start to move into a place where we share more about the information that Imagine Miracles brings and more about how you can find the miracle you in your day-to-day life, in who you are, where you are, and what you're all about. Really, truly finding your why. And as I shared with you in the last podcast, we want to get to a place that you understand a little bit more about the energetic world and how things operate and what we haven't been taught in school. It's really about raising your awareness. And some people would call that moving into a higher level of consciousness. It is really just understanding some of the universal laws, understanding about where life presents itself and how life presents itself in being the creator of your own life. So when we talk about waking up, like we did in the last podcast, we're really talking about awakening to this new information, awakening to who you are as an energetic being, who you are as part of this universal energy, and how we can bring that to our lives and how we can bring that to the world. So from time to time, I will be bringing Mary on the podcast with me, and we'll discuss things that we've been discussing in our lives and things that we've learned in our lives, and how that is affecting us, and how we can see it affect you moving forward in discovering your miracle life and living the life that you're designed to live. Mary, can you say hi to the imagination? And what do you think we should discuss today in this Awakening series?
I would love to say hi to everyone. And there's something that is really neat and true to me that I'd love to chat about about, which is the observer and the ego. And that's something that Vince has really helped me see and understand a lot more. And I would love for all of you to maybe get a little bit out of this in our conversation today.
Well, let's look at it first of all from the science point of view to kind of give people an idea of what the observer is. What quantum physics says is as the observer of the life of your life. So what quantum physics says, as the observer of your life, you're truly the creator of your reality. But the question is, who is the observer? In many podcasts, I've talked about we create with our thoughts and our feelings. And that's really the way that we talk to the universe. That's the way we connect with the unlimited possibilities of the universe. And in that, the observer is really the one that chooses or doesn't choose what thoughts we carry out into the universe, the thoughts that we radiate out. The observer is that part of us that can listen to the voices in our heads, can listen to the voices in our heart, and decide which voices we're going to listen to.
I think for me, I've had a lot of experience, all of you out there, when I hear that expression, the voices in your head, what does that mean? And I've spent a lot of time identifying the answer to that. And we've done a lot of work on really understanding that the voices in your head are those voices you hear that doubt you, doubt the people around you. They can be negative, and sometimes they can just be almost neutral or even apathetic, like, I don't care. Or, no, you're not going to do that. And one of the conversations we were having was, what do you do with that information? And how do you make an empowered decision when you're tuned in and able to hear all of these doubtful type voices? And Vince, I'm sure you have something to clarify on that thought.
Well, like you said, Mary, the voices in our head are loud and they're almost constant for most of us. Those voices are our personality and our subpersonalities. It's truly, as I've said in earlier podcasts, the ego and your personality is pretty much interchangeable. So those ego voices in your head are the voices that represent the different parts of your personality that you developed to help protect you or to get you through a situation when you were younger that you didn't feel comfortable or you didn't feel capable of getting through. So if, as an example, if we look at my childhood, there was points in my life where through interactions with my grandfather, I never felt adequate. I never felt that I could live up to him. And what I did was I developed a subpersonality that protected me from people who expected so much of me. And that personality was really almost part of the critic in me. So that personality that I developed actually pushed me harder. It told me where I wasn't living up to what I should be living up to because my grandfather had such high expectations. So that voice now comes up when I feel like I've let somebody down, where I've not given somebody what they wanted, and in their reaction to me that I came up short, that critic in me takes over and it starts pushing me to find a way to be better, to give them what they need. It's actually that part of me that's the fixer, really, the part of me that has to make things better so I'm accepted and I'm loved. So those are the kind of voices, Mary, that we hear in our heads all the time. Now, one of the things in our discussion when we were talking about the observer that came up was it's a very difficult concept to understand. And I'm not quite sure if my brain is wrapped around it completely yet either. But one of the ways that I look at the observer is it's almost like our free will. That part of us that has the ability to choose between that empowering voice that's in our head or those disempowering voices that are coming from the ego in its desire to protect us. And one of the things I want to make sure that we get across to everyone is the ego is not a bad thing. The ego is actually so important to you. Your personality is really what helps you create in this world. So we need to have that personality. We just need to move it into that higher vibration. And when we move it into the higher vibration, the ego is more protective of us accomplishing what it is that we want to accomplish and not holding us back from that in its protection. Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense. And I think you really are onto something with how the observer plays a role in that process.
So in the observer understanding then that I truly have a choice, that doesn't mean that we still don't operate on autopilot sometimes. And when I say autopilot, those are those automatic reactions that come from the ego. And they're triggered by events that happen in our life or the way that circumstances unravel. I guess one of the best ways to look at that is if you look at the brain as a whole. We have these neurons in our brains, and the neural networks are all wired together based on circumstances that we've experienced. It puts things together, and as each one of those neurons wire together, those circumstances become really automatic reactions if we don't live in the moment. And that's something that I'm not too excited about or haven't been too excited about in the past because living in the moment became a cliche to me and I really didn't understand it. But really, when we say living in the moment, it's just let's say the observer being aware of what's going on in your life at that time and using free will to decide what your thoughts are going to be, decide where your feelings and your thoughts come together. And that, I think that's really brings it to a semi-basic level, but I realize that it's such a new concept, and that's why we're bringing these new awarenesses to the world.
Yeah, I'd like to share. I had an experience yesterday where I was very, very upset about something that was unrelated to Vince. And I had to actually stay present. I think this is a pertinent story because what I didn't want to do was project my frustration, my disappointment, my hurt on him. And I'm wondering, Vince, if you think that making that decision in that moment that I am going to re-engage in day-to-day life in that moment and not project all of my emotions on Vince, even though it would have been wonderful to have had the experience of letting all my ick out and letting someone tell me it's going to be okay. I'm starting to learn that would have been projecting. So the point is that there was a moment in time where I made the decision. I am not going to project all of these hurt feelings that had nothing to do with him on him. What do you think?
And that, Mary, is the observer really taking charge and being the master of your mind and deciding what thoughts you were going to hold, what actions that you were going to allow out. And in that, your reality changed because, share a little bit with the imagination on if you would have projected out, what would that have looked like?
If I had projected out, I would have felt better, right? Because I would have been able to emote and get all of this lower vibration energy out of my body. So I probably would have told stories, and I would have been very dramatic. And I probably ultimately would have figured out a way to either get Vince to make me feel better by taking his energy that way, or I would have figured out a way to get him mad so I could stay mad, with the goal of, either I feel better now and I can calm down, or, see, I am not safe because he got mad at me too. And now I'm feeling even more of the same emotions that someone else had made me feel.
So that's a perfect example, Mary, of how your reality is really chosen by the observer, how you look at life, what's your perception of the situation. So let's take the second example that you shared with us there. So in you pushing to a place where I allowed my vibration to lower, and maybe I snapped out in protection, or I went into that automatic reaction because my ego wanted to protect me from being attacked. In that place right there, our reality could have been pretty ugly. There probably would have been an argument. There probably would have been some hurt feelings. We may not even have talked to each other for a little while after that. And that's really not the reality that you would want to create.
Exactly.
In your observer saying, I don't want to have those thoughts. I don't want to go to that place. I want to look at my situation right now, and I want to deal with the situation that I'm feeling, the hurt that I'm feeling, the anger that I'm feeling from the circumstance that you are talking about here. And I want to stay at a higher vibration. I want to experience life in a different way. And in that, then the reality that we co-created was so much more pleasant than it could have been if we got into that place where the two egos were fighting back and forth. So yes, that's a great example of the observer making a decision on what our reality is going to be like through its perception of the circumstances and the situation. Now, one of the most important things about it is the observer is constantly dealing with our belief system and our ego in how we're going to react to a situation.
That's a pretty profound understanding there, Vince. And I totally agree with you. It's definitely, I mean, I'm sure you want to talk about the belief system part of it, but it certainly is about being aware in the moment before you make that choice to either raise your own vibration and handle your own emotions, and what caused that. Why was I so upset? What was the undercurrent that made me so upset with this other person?
Well, part of the wake up process, Mary, when we talk about wake ups is the fact that, we realize that life can and should look a different way than we're experiencing it. We realize that we do have a birthright to live the life that we're desiring. But on the same note, part of that wake up is just understanding where we are right now. And that's why it's so important. And that's why we bring it to light in our Discover Your Miracle Life programs. Why the very first step is, where are you? Because it's also waking up is bringing an awareness to how you're living life right now and where that is all coming from. So we discussed a little bit that our ego is formed as a young child, mostly because there are situations in our lives that we didn't know how to deal with. So we created a personality to deal with that for us. But also as a young child, we developed a belief system based on our experiences around us. And one of the things that I really like to share in our programs is the fact that most of our beliefs, pretty much all of our beliefs that we're living by day to day right now, were formed before were 7 years old. And in that time frame, really 7 years old is where our reasoning part of our brain started to develop. So we looked at life from a situation where we didn't even have the physical capabilities in our brain to reason out the circumstances and to look at what was happening to us in our lives and really make a decision based on the fact, does that make any sense or not? When we had something happen in our lives, it was happening to us. And because as 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, we are the center of our universe, everything that happened in our lives was because of us. So a perfect example, if you were around parents who express themselves in loud shouting voices and they got angry because their egos were triggered and they were yelling and screaming at each other, and because of that they were angry and they didn't treat you as a young child as well as they should have, you take that as there's something wrong with you. It's not because they're angry at each other, because you can't reason out that it was them that they were angry at. It was obviously you, and there's something wrong with you, and you take on that burden of there's something wrong with you, and then you develop a belief system in that. And now when things happen in your life, as you get older and older and older, when somebody gets angry, it's obviously something that you did. There's something wrong there. So that's why it's so important to develop the awareness that we started talking about early in this podcast of where you are right now. What is your belief system? What did you develop as a child is kind of your operating set, kind of your operating system, just like a computer. And then also, where are the personalities that you develop to protect yourself? Because those are the two areas that really affect how you look at life if the observer doesn't look at it from a higher vibrational aspect. Did that make sense? Is there anything there that you think I should clarify?
No, I think it's just such a huge concept, Vince. I mean, I'm sitting here, we talk about this stuff all the time, and I was listening to you with new ears and, just thinking about how lots of times I'm probably living my life as a 7-year-old or a 13-year-old or a 30-year-old. And I'm far from those ages now, but I still have that automatic response of that even 30-year-old. And I do think maybe you could mention a little bit about the observer, how the observer chooses the higher vibration. What does that mean?
Well, I'd like to share a little bit of story about my childhood, because when I was younger, about the 4, 5, 6-year-old time frame, there was many times in my life where one of my parents was very angry, and in being that angry, there was a lot of things said that really hurt and really cut deeply. And I got to a place where I felt it was my responsibility to be the person that supported everybody when they felt down and support everybody when they were angry. And that belief system is still a very big part of me, and it's something that I'm working to reframe. So some of our beliefs are so ingrained in us and so deep that they take a while to reframe. But every single one of them, we can look at our beliefs, because there isn't any belief that you have that's real. It's just a perception. And then through the law of attraction, you created proof that that belief was true. But there's really no true belief. So we can find and we can develop and we can change our beliefs to ones that are more empowering, that really help us create the life that we want, to see circumstances in a way that are empowering to us instead of seeing the exact same circumstance through a more limiting belief as one that's disempowering. So how the observer, if we allow I guess if the observer takes control, if you will, and I know control is a very touchy word to use, but if the observer starts mastering our thoughts and choosing the thoughts that are most empowering to us, then it's choosing ones that keep us from feeling like we're being put down, keeps us from feeling like they're bringing out the emotions of anger, despair, fear. Those are all lower vibrational emotions. And that's definitely a discussion for another podcast. But when the ego is allowed to express itself, but then the higher self is also allowed to express itself, and now the observer chooses that higher vibrational thought. Now what happens is there's a movement towards starting to change a belief in a way that will support that in the future. And I know that's a very deep way to put it. So I guess what the observer is doing is choosing a perception that is more conducive to you experiencing the emotions of happiness, of joy, of hopefulness. And in those emotions, that's where you're experiencing the higher vibration.
That makes sense. Well done.
I think it might be a little deep, but as we continue going through this podcast series, I think we'll be able to present that to people even in a more concise, in a more understandable way. Is there anything, Mary, that we need to address yet today when it comes to the observer, the ego, the belief system?
Well, you did mention the higher self. So maybe just a real quick clarifying that concept as well.
Well, it's pretty tough to be quick about describing the higher self. But what I would like to say is there's a part of us that is tapped into all the knowledge that's available in the universe. There's a part of us that isn't affected by the 3D world, and that's the part of us that has all our answers. And that's the part of us that we help people tap into through the Discover Your Miracle Life series. And that's the part of us that's leading us down our path. That's the part of us, as I said, that has all the answers to where do we go from here? What's the best direction? How do we experience things in our lives so we can uncover our talents and gifts? So that's the part of us that some people call the soul. That's the part of us that some people call the non-physical. Abraham, through Esther Hicks, used to address the non-physical and the physical part of us, and that non-physical part of us is what I'm calling the higher self.
And I think it would be really fun in future podcasts to talk about how to speak to the higher self or listen, as today we're talking about listening to the observer and listening to the ego.
So we'll put that on our list of one of the Awakening podcast series to come on how to at least listen to the voices, or at least hear the voices and understand which voices are talking to you.
Sounds good to me.
Well, I think we've given everybody a lot to think about, a lot to absorb. We would sure love to hear your questions. If you have any questions, just send them to Vince at imaginemiracles.com, and I will put together the most asked questions, and we'll do a podcast on that also. For those of you, say again, Mary?
I said, I look forward to that. I love to hear people's questions, and I think you have a real talent at answering them on a very personal and I want to say acute. I don't know if that's the right word, but you do have a talent for answering people's questions. So I hope people will write in.
Well, I appreciate that very much, and I do enjoy answering people's questions. For those of you who want a little bit more information, might want to talk to us personally one-on-one, if you go to the show page for this show, you'll find a box where you can click on, and it's a link to get a one-on-one strategy session with us. We call it Your Life, Your Way Breakthrough Session, and it's where you sit down with Mary and I, really take a look at where your life is right now, what might be the biggest roadblock in your life, and what might be the next step that you can take to move beyond that roadblock. And all of us in Imagine Miracles want to help you find the real you. We want you to be able to bring all of you to the world because the world needs you. There's also an opportunity for a couple free downloads, and there's also one more opportunity that we really want to encourage you to take advantage of. Mary and I have a community called the Imagination Miracles Community, and we have a membership site where there is a basic level membership where you can download a lot of information from the Imagine Miracles team, the things that we use in our programs, and we think they'll be very beneficial to you in taking that next step in awareness, in opening your mind and opening your heart. So on behalf of Mary and myself, we want to wish you a very miracle day.
You've completed this episode of The Miracle You, but we have plenty more to help you discover your own personal passion and purpose. Head over to themiracleyou.com for free resources to assist you on your journey, as well as register for our free webinar, Discover Your Miracle Life, 3 mind awakening steps toward your unique purpose, or apply for a one-on-one Your Life, Your Way breakthrough session and discover your next best step on your journey. All available exclusively on our website. That's themiracleyou.com. We look forward to sharing more experiences of passion, purpose, and life by design next time, right here on The Miracle You.